Hello, everybody. Welcome to Connected Inc. I'm Doug Little, head of Wacom America's PR, and we're honored today to have Stacy Roshan with us. She's an old friend of Wacom. We've known her for quite a few years, and we're excited to have her for today's presentation that's entitled Collaborative, Connected, and Paperless Learning. So this is a topic that's very popular right now because of all the things going on around remote learning. And thanks for joining us, Stacy. Stacy's been a longtime Wacom user and a great friend of ours. She's the Director of Innovation and Educational Technology at the Bullis School in Potomac, Maryland. And she's also a teacher for advanced placement calculus, something that only she understands. I certainly don't, so that's exciting. Thanks, Stacy, for being such a great teacher. We really appreciate it. And she's also the author of an amazing book called Tech with Heart. I've read it, and it's a great book. And Stacy has been involved in the Flipped Classroom initiative for a long time. She's been teaching remote for a long time, and we're really excited to have her for Connected Inc. So Stacy, welcome, and take it away.
Oh, thank you so much for such a warm, wonderful introduction, Doug. I'm so excited to have a chance to talk today about some of the things that I've discovered over the years. As Doug mentioned, I have been flipping my classroom. I started flipping my classroom in 2010. And, you know, I've played around with a lot of tools to get a sweet spot of a workflow that works really well for me and my students. And I'm excited to share with you today some of the things that have been the biggest wins for me. And so I will share a little bit more about kind of how my flipped classroom goes, but also how I truly bring interaction into my classroom. In addition to just teaching a face-to-face AP Calculus class over the years, I've also taught in a purely online setting for a number of years. And so a real challenge for me there was how was I going to hear and see how my students were working through problems. A big part of the learning process is understanding how students are thinking through problems. And so the pen technology, having students be able to write on a platform where I can see in real time how they're writing, and that goes into how they're thinking, that gives me tremendous power and insight. And that's what I'm really excited to share with you today. So I'm going to switch over to a screen share so that we can see what this is all about. I will be talking today a lot about my Wacom tablet, which tablets I recommend, but also how I pair this up with Pear Deck. And what Pear Deck is it is a add-on to your Google Slides. If you use PowerPoint, then you can use PowerPoint and it can integrate with that. But it is a way to add interactivity into any Google Slides presentation. And what's so powerful about it is that it has this drawing mode. So I can ink up any of my Google Slides presentations and my students can interact with me in that. And so I'm going to demonstrate that for you today. So first of all, I just always like to talk about our goals for today and why the right technology can really make all the difference. I think that's, you know, one of the things that I've played so much with over the years is finding the right tools that work well together. I knew that I needed a way to digitally write on my screen, but then what am I going to pair that up with? So that's what I want to share with you today. I'll talk a little bit about different Wacom tablets and which one might be the right one for you, and then really diving into the power of combining these two tools together, your Wacom tablet along with Pear Deck. So for me, it all started back in 2010 when I had this tablet PC, which is what you see in the picture here. I had that was a school issued device. The year before was teaching AP Calculus and I ran into this problem. My problem was that I didn't have enough time for all the questions that I was getting in my AP Calculus classroom because of the pace of that course, because of the amount of content that we needed to get through. And I knew that one of my primary teaching goals was to be able to really develop strong relationships with all my students to a point where I knew what they needed so that I could help them build a level of math confidence that they may not have experienced before. And so that was when I looked to technology as a piece of my solution, and I discovered screencasting. And just that simple thing of screencasting was all that I needed. I was able to take all of the things that I would primarily lecture in the classroom, and I offloaded that to video that I pre-recorded, and then students would watch that for homework so that in the classroom it could become really dynamic, that we could do a lot of problem solving together, that it could become a really interactive and collaborative classroom environment. And it also really reduced the amount of stress for my students because they were able to get their questions answered in the classroom. Really, I was there when they were doing the most difficult work, which was the problem solving. And so this was the beginning of my journey. But as a person who has been a Mac user, I had to use this tablet PC, which wasn't my most comfortable spot. And so that was when I learned about the Wacom tablets a couple years later. And that allowed me to have another solution. I could use a device that I really wanted to use the most. And again, I could use the applications that I was already using. So lack of time was my issue. And then I discovered the flipped classroom approach. And so this, to me, the flipped classroom, what it's really about is shifting the role of the student to becoming more resourceful and independent in their learning. My classroom environment became much more collaborative and supportive. I actually thought I was going to be the one running all around and answering a million questions that my students had, because that's what it was like before I flipped my classroom. But I discovered when I gave my students all this time in the classroom to work, well, they would rather ask their classmate a question than ask me the question if they have 30 minutes to 45 minutes to work on problems. And so all of a sudden my students were becoming the solvers of problems, and they were doing so much peer-to-peer learning. It was really a wonderful experience to see all of the side benefits that I didn't even know. So my role really shifted to that facilitator and that guide to guide students both individually and in their small group work, and listening in on their conversations and letting them take ownership, and for me to really support them in their learning, again, helping them build that level of confidence that I wasn't quite able to help them achieve before. And so back to the devices, there are two main devices that I always talk about in the Wacom line, and that is the Wacom Intuos tablet, and that one I have right here also. The benefit to this is that it is wireless. So in the classroom, it is really nice. It's very portable. You can get the Bluetooth version of this. And the thing is that this is a blank slate tablet. So you can see that in this picture or what I'm holding up on the screen. And so what that means is I have to look up to my monitor to know where I'm writing. So that is, there's a little learning curve. I've gotten over it. Actually, all my students have one of these in the classroom. I have a class set of this. My students learn within about a month. But it isn't a screen that you're writing on. It doesn't give you another screen. You have to look up at your monitor. It is like a giant mouse pad, but you're writing with the pen precision because you have the actual pen. So the writing experience is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. This is a small version of it. And I really love that for in the classroom when I need to be portable, walking around, or if I want to throw something in my bag. But when I was talking about the videos that I make, that's at a moment where I'm sitting at my desk, I'm plugged into the wall, I have a microphone plugged in. And so if wires aren't an issue, then I use the Wacom One. And so what you can see here is this is just mirroring my screen because I have another screen, but this is a whole nother screen. So it's like you have another monitor. It is great in the remote learning setting to have two monitors, two screens in front of us. And then I can see what I'm actually writing on. And so I really love the Wacom One for making my flipped classroom videos. That is what I make them on entirely. And the handwriting experience on this is just, it's so fluid. It just feels like you're writing on a piece of paper. It is perfect for my needs as a math teacher. I handwrite a lot, and it's been fantastic. So hopefully that gives you an overview. The reason I recommend the Wacom One is that's the lowest price point for a pen display that Wacom offers. And so that's met all my needs entirely. So that's what I recommend because that's what I use. So let me tell you a little bit of background, a little bit about me and why I'm so interested in this idea of how do we really allow all students to have their voice and contribution heard. So me as a student, I was very much that introverted perfectionist, and being able to answer questions on the spot in the classroom oftentimes caused me a lot of anxiety. And also I just couldn't always give my best response, my best answer on the spot. I am a math thinker. I am an analyzer. I think that's why I love math. I love to sit and think and work things out. But being able to just, have somebody call on me right there on the spot and have my answer, it's not when my voice shines. I like to be able to formulate a response, think it out, and then talk it out. And so I didn't always have that opportunity. When I was a student, I didn't have a laptop in the classroom. I didn't have, my teachers didn't have all these ways to allow me to speak up and make my voice heard. But now the game has shifted. In my classroom, all students have a laptop every day. And so there's so many ways that I can allow students to have their voice heard, whether that means like them verbally speaking up or just being able to type a response and allowing the full class to be able to see that contribution. And so, I really think that it's important, while I'm going to talk all about tools and the tools that I've found that work for me, is a tool is only a tool until it is part of a solution. So thinking first, like I told you, my journey into my flipped classroom was I had a problem. That time, that pressure of getting through so much content in AP Calculus was my problem. And because I identified my problem first, I came to a really great solution for me and my students. And so much of this is individual. What's going to work for you and your students isn't necessarily the same exact things that have worked for me and my students, but I can share with you some of my experiences, and hopefully you'll find some answers that fit your style and your environment. And so one of my big solutions to get at that problem, to how do I allow all the students in my classroom to contribute, has been Pear Deck. So again, I said at the beginning, Pear Deck is for Google Slides, is what I use. We're a Google school. It is an add-on, so it's right in the add-on menu. You can see it just pops open this little sidebar here, and I can add interactivity to any Google Slides presentation that I've already created. So this isn't starting from scratch. If you already have Google Slides, you just take them, you import them in, and you add different question types. You can add text type questions, you can add number type questions, you can add drawing type questions. And that's what I'm going to focus on today, the drawing, because that's where the Wacom comes in. And then students have the opportunity to draw the answer to the question you've asked. So for example, draw the planet that comes after Jupiter. They can draw using the different pen options that are available right within Pear Deck. And then as a teacher, this is my view right here. I can see all the student answers coming in this dashboard view in real time. And so that's the power. There's no submit button. There's no waiting for students to turn in their work. In real time, as they're drawing, I can see that happen. So there's a student view. If they're in like a webinar, if they're in a Zoom, or if they are in Google Meet, then I always recommend that they have two things open. So they kind of have whatever my screen share is. So you can see that I'm sharing maybe this dashboard view. So my students are able to see that dashboard, but they have another window open where they have their own Pear Deck. So they're writing on their own Pear Deck. But when I show the responses of the class, I can now turn the attention of my screen share over to student responses. And that's the power here. I'm taking the focus away from my screen, even though it's my screen share, and I'm putting it back on student work. So this is an example from my actual AP Calculus class. So as I said, all of my students actually have a Wacom Intuos tablet. I have a class set of these. Let me just tell you, these things are an investment, one-time investment that lasts a long time. This is my personal experience. I got a class set back in 2013. We're now in 2020. I'm using the same exact class set of Wacom Intuos tablets. Those things have hung on, they've worked, we pass them back and forth on a daily basis. I mean, what type of technology lasts that many years? You know, there's few things, but because we just plug these into the laptops, there isn't any updating the software or anything like that. So I don't have to worry about anything. Plus, any student, you know, I have some students that are bringing in Macs. I have some students who are bringing in PCs. Every student can use this, and it's just, they plug it in. The ones that I have in the classroom, they plug in with USB, and that's it. So it works with any student's device. And they just plug and play, and it works with whatever applications you are already using on your computer. So it's not like, you know, I'm using an iPad, for instance, and I can only use the iPad apps. This just works with anything you're using on your computer. Again, I like to just explain it as, if you could use your mouse to do something, now you can use pen precision to do it. So my students all have that, so they're able to do their math AP Calculus answers here. But what I'm able to see in this dashboard in real time is the students who are solving almost the whole problem versus the students who are stuck. Like, they could just get to drawing the picture and that's it. They really need my help. And there's two views in PearDeck. There's one with names attached, and you can see that I've blurred out the names here for my student privacy, but these names are attached in this view, so I can get that information. But when I'm projecting in the classroom, it's actually always anonymous. And that's another really nice thing about using PearDeck, is that I don't have to worry about calling out a student for an incorrect response. And I'm about to show you that in a moment, that I just project the answers of the full class, and we can see what everybody's thinking without having to call a specific student out, because it will show up on the classroom screen anonymously. And then this dashboard view, I can get afterwards, or I can do it on another screen that I'm not projecting for the whole class, so that I can get more individualized data about which students need my help, so that when we break out into groups, I know who to get to first before anything else. So again, I think that something that I always like to talk about is, how do we give all students an opportunity to be vocal in classroom discussion without calling them out or making them feel uncomfortable? And for some students, their voice is going to shine when you call on them. And I don't want to take that away. So I don't mean to say that this is about students just replying on their computer or hiding behind their laptop, because it is all about the discussion. It's about the conversation starter. So in this way, by using PearDeck, I'm asking all students to please think about your reply on your computer. Once you've taken that opportunity, that chance to think about it and write it, then we bring that to the board. And so those students who would like to speak up at that time, they can, if they're on a Zoom, they can unmute their mic and they can talk up. If they're in the classroom, they can just chat and talk out their response. But for the students who, you know, their voice is going to shine when I just pull up their response on the screen, and they don't have to speak about it, but their work speaks for itself. Now I have the opportunity to shine light on that. And sometimes it's that at that point, when I do shine light on it, that student who may not have spoken up now speaks up, because they see their response on the board and they're proud of that. So I think that it's just important to provide these platforms for all of our different students to be able to share their best work. So let's dive into that interactive segment so that you'll be able to see what it is like for both a student. I have some people on with me right now, so that we're going to be able to do a little mock classroom so you can see how real time all of this is. What I'm also going to do for you is I'm going to open up two screens so that you can see both from home, both the student screen and the teacher screen, so you can see that interaction going on. So on the left side right here, this is going to be my teacher dashboard or my projector view, what I'm going to be doing the screen share of for my students. And on the right side, what you're going to be able to see is what the students would see. So I'm logged in as a student over here on the right, and I'm logged in as a teacher here on the left. All right, so let's start with a little bit of math. So I'm going to ask my class to please place the red dot on the point 0, 0, place the green dot on the point 1, 2, and then place the blue dot on the point 2, 4. And while people are dragging, I'm going to show the responses. So this is the ability right now, people could be dragging, like I'm a student, I can be dragging my dot, but you'll see that nothing happens on my screen. Nothing happens until I show responses. So I'm going to show the responses so you can see how real time this dragging of dots is. So I'll put it on the point 0, 0. And I'm going to pretend that I'm confused right now. So I'm going to do that. And I see some people still dragging their dots. And so maybe I've given enough time right now. Maybe I want to call the attention of the class back to the board. And I see one person still moving their dot around. Maybe they're being that student who's just trying to cause some trouble. What I can do is I can actually lock the screen. And you can see that the students see that your teacher has locked responses. And so that's a cue to my students. All right, let's bring the attention back to the board. Let's talk about these responses. Let's talk about what's right. Let's talk about what's wrong. So this is a view right here that's called the overlaid view. And I see everything stacked one on top of one another. So it's a great way to see if we have consensus. We can see that we have a lot of students who are saying the same thing, but we have a couple students who are saying something different. Then I like to break it down into, there can be the grid layout if you want to see, I have 6 students on right now, kind of what's going on. And then I also have a list layout. If I just want to turn the attention to one response, so say we want to discuss this one. Now I can just say, all right, you want to unmute your mic, let's talk about this answer. Or maybe I want to put up this response and just say, hey, why might they have placed their green dot here? What do you think this student might have been thinking? In this one, there's probably no rationale. I just randomly moved my dot there. But this would be an opportunity for us to discuss. Sometimes there's real power in talking about the incorrect responses because, you know, why was this mistake made? Let's analyze it. Let's dig into it. Let's talk about it. And so at this moment, we can do this. So again, I've asked everybody to think about their reply before we bring that conversation up. And so that is really powerful also. I'm able to see everybody's replies. All right. And I could always unlock the screens and allow students to move back their dots. Maybe I want them to be able to make the correction at this point. I can give that opportunity right now also. Okay, let's dig into the next question. So in this one, this is a drawing type question. So this is where I'm going to actually use my tablet and I'm going to write with the pen tools. So I'm going to show the responses right now so you can see what's going on in my classroom. I'm going to show the grid layout for this one because a lot of times I like to see a lot of things that are going on. And I want to show you how real time this interaction is, okay? So I'm writing right now. It's hard for me to show it right now. But what I can do is I can change the pen size. So I'm going to make my pen smaller. You can make it bigger and smaller just like that. And I'm going to choose red right now. And so I have the point -1, and then I'm going to put in the point -2. So you can see, you could see both things, me writing on this side and me writing over here, how real time that happens. Let me show it to you. I'm going to just put the focus on my one answer so you can see just how real time this is. So I'm writing right now. And you can see it is instantaneous. So as a teacher, sometimes I make these a little bit instructional, and this is a way of me to be able to write on my slides. I'm going to show you more of that later, but also I can have everybody from class responding. Everybody's responded. You can see I can scroll through them one at a time like this. This student has chosen to use the text reply. So there is also text. If a student maybe didn't have the Wacom device, but you as the teacher do, so you can draw, but your students can't, they need to they could draw some stuff with their mouse, or they can type with the text tool. And then again, we can have a powerful conversation about this on the board. Again, I have the different layouts, and this one overlaid is going to be a bit of a mess because I'm not going to be able to see what's going on, but you always have that view. The grid layout is really great to see what's going on for everybody. And then the list layout when I want to bring attention to one answer here. So I could, and we could talk about, do you think this is correct? Yes, it is. No, it isn't. And we can talk about it. Again, at this moment in time, I'm putting the focus on a student response instead of just my response. And I think that is so important, especially if you're teaching in a remote learning setting right now. How do you take the screen share, that focus on your screen, away from just your work and put it back on student work? And so this is a way to do that. Finally, we've got to do a little bit of graphing. So let's go ahead and try and graph y equals 2 here. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and give everybody a full minute to solve this problem. So I can set a little timer. And while I hate timing things in math, I think that math should not be a speed race by any means. And that's why I like using PearDeck a lot, because it gives students that opportunity to have that sit and think time. Sometimes I actually, I'm prone to like moving on too quickly because there's silence and nobody likes silence. And so this reminds me to give enough wait time. And sometimes I'm just giving some warm-up problems at the beginning of class, and I just want to move through that at the right pace so that we have enough time for whatever other activity we want to do. So the timer can be great for that. So I can keep it on, and I'm going to go ahead and draw a couple points here like this. Go over 2, up 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I can even pull out a line tool over here. I'll change the color of that line tool, make it a little bit thinner, and then draw my line just like that. And look, timing is great. So at that point, because the timer's up, it locked the screens. So my students can't answer anymore. If I saw that somebody needed, a couple more seconds, again, I can always unlock the screen. Like that is fluid. I can lock, I can unlock. Now let's show the responses and see what everybody was thinking. So let's go back into grid view and I can see all the responses. In this one, the layout view is super helpful. The overlaid view is super helpful because I like to stack grids on top of one another so that I can see, like, do we have consensus? We mainly do, but this person's line was less steep. So that would be a great one for me to know that I want to discuss as a math teacher. I want to talk about the steepness of the curve for this y equals 2x. So at this point, I got that idea that, okay, let's talk about that answer first. So let's go over to list. Let's find that answer and let's discuss it. So at this moment, we could talk about that. So that's the little demo. I'm gonna talk a little bit more now about these interaction types that we have in the classroom. I love this visual that's actually created by Pear Deck. I love it because, I think it's easy in the remote setting to think about how we're going to assign tasks for students to do behind a computer, but how do we preserve that opportunity to really check in with students and keep that one-on-one or the small group work? How do we keep that? And most importantly, how do we keep the peer-to-peer learning and interaction happening? And I think Pear Deck is a big piece of solving this. So, students behind their screens, all right, all students are solving the Pear Deck on their screen, on their own. They're able to contribute. Okay, so they're able to do that work. Then as the teacher, what I'm able to do is after class, or even during class on another screen, I'm able to pull up this other dashboard view, and that dashboard view actually has all names attached. So while what I was showing you on the projector didn't have names, I have this other view that I can pull up, and that would have all names attached. And because of that, then I know which students I need to get to. If I have a slow starter, if I have somebody who wasn't responding that day, I get all of that rich information right there in real time. I don't need to wait until students all turn in their work. I don't have to wait until the next day. I get that live real-time information so that I know as soon as I have students break out into groups, what student I need to go around to and get their needs met. And I want to throw in that it's not just about asking the question types that I've asked you, that I've shown you so far, where it's just like math questions, but I really try and pull in different questions to ask students, how are you doing today? What's going on with you? What do you need from me? Give students that space to tell me what they need from me, so that I can personally address that. And again, giving students that platform, asking them the questions they might never tell you about if you don't ask them. Not everybody's going to answer all of them. That's fine. But a student who wants to share that with you now has the space. So how do we open up that space for our students? The last is that peer-to-peer learning. And again, I just feel like I'm able to take the attention off of my screen, even though it's my screen share, and I'm able to pull up the work of the students and allow them to talk about their own responses or the responses of their peers, so that they're able to learn from one another. And so that I take that attention away from just the way I'm thinking about the problem and I'm doing the problem and always on me. I can put it on how students are thinking through the problem, how they're solving it, how they're even, working through the problem. And that's what I love about the handwriting, is because it's not always a linear process that students are thinking in, and I can really give them that creative freedom to write and draw all around their screen. So again, here is some AP Calculus responses. You can see how well they're able to write with this Intuos tablet. And I'm able to, again, pull up not just the right answers, but the wrong answers. And that is anonymous. So I'm not calling an individual student out. It's not like I'm asking that student to go up to the board when the wrong answer is up there. I'm able to highlight it in a way that's productive for our class conversation. Because when students can get themselves unstuck, when they can analyze where the mistake might have been made, I mean, that's a huge part of the battle. That is the most important work that I can help students, help them become problem solvers, versus just telling them how to do problems. I don't want them to systematically think. That's not where the great thinking happens. But how can you analyze mistakes? How can you help your classmate get unstuck in this moment? That's what I'm able to do. So, another thing is just that I'm always thinking about is, how can we cultivate compassion in our classrooms through the intentional integration of technology into the design of our lessons? And that's always my biggest goal, is that I think that technology really can allow us to bring a deeper level of understanding and relationships to the work that we do with students. Many people think that technology, it's about automating. I think that's far from the truth. I think that these tech tools have given me such insight into students and to their work, into how they're thinking through things, that I never would have been able to gather otherwise. I'm able to get it so instantaneously, so in real time. And it's been amazing. And so I think that, for me, I've had to shift around some of the ways that I designed my lessons to use these tools in a better, more meaningful way. And so I'm going to show you some of the slide types that PearDeck provides that has helped me become a better educator also, in terms of the questions that I'm asking and remembering. Am I checking in with students on a daily basis? Am I asking them those questions? Am I giving them the opportunity to tell me what's going on? Let me at least make sure that I'm doing my part to ask those questions and to get that information from students, so that I can follow up with them on a very personal and individualized level. So I do want to show one other thing that's been very powerful for me as a teacher in using PearDeck. Again, I said that I was logged in, as you saw, logged in to the PearDeck as a student. So basically what students do to join PearDeck is, when you start class, you pull this up, and it is, you tell everybody, go to joinpd.com, and you get a unique code for this lesson. So I had started in my Google Slides. I opened up this PearDeck sidebar. I press the start lesson button. I can start it for each of my different blocks so that I keep everything separate. You make one Google Slides presentation, you start the lesson, and it pulls up this screen for you. At this point, your students would log in, but you can pretend to be a student. So I can log in, I can just say, give students a link, copy that link and open it in a new tab. And that's what I've done over here is I've opened that same exact thing, but I'm a teacher on this side, I'm a student on this side, I'm logged in with my same Google account, no big deal. And I'm able to have both of those views up. The reason that this is so powerful, again, is sometimes I just need instructional slides like this one. I'm teaching my students about this certain, we're doing some revolutions and I need to explain it. I need to be able to ink up my Google Slides. In Google Slides, there's no way to ink on your Google Slides. If you're a math teacher, I know you feel my pain here. So instead, I can just launch it as a Pear Deck, and I could even make this a little bit bigger. Let me make it a little bit bigger right now so that I'm focusing on just this. And on this screen, I might tell my students, just turn your attention to my screen. You don't need to worry about answering this question. This is going to be an instructional slide. And so I can go ahead and take out my Pear Deck pen tool. So again, I'm writing on my tablet right here. So I'm saying, all right, let's pick a color. So I'm going to pick blue right here. And then I can say, identify the bounds of integration. So I can use this to highlight, to mark up. So let's go ahead. And the bounds of integration are going to be here and here. So I can draw just like that. I can draw the radius outer. Again, I can just be inking up my slides just as I'm talking. You know what? I wasn't even reading the problem because on this one, I'm revolving around y equals 1. So in case anybody's a math teacher on here, I better do this right. So we're revolving around here. So you can see how easily I can draw right on this screen, and in real time it's showing up for all my students to be able to view. So simple, so easy. I can mark it up and I can teach. So I can make this an instructional slide, and then maybe the next slide that I have would be an interactive question where I would ask students to respond with me. So I can do both within the presentation. My students don't need to be answering every single slide. In fact, I think if I'm having them answer on every single slide, it's a little bit wearing to them. It's too much. We don't ask students to answer every single question in the classroom. So that's a little bit overboard. I have a lot of my slides that are instructional. I'm talking about them, and then I follow up with a question for the class. And so this was one of them that I was doing some multiple choice as we were getting ready for the AP exam here. And what I asked students to do, even if students in your class, for instance, say they don't have a tablet at home, no big deal. You could ask everybody to go ahead and circle an answer. So I'm going to ask my class, everybody who's on right now, could you just circle an answer? I don't care if you're right or wrong on this one. And I'm going to show the responses here. Okay, so I see some students responding here. And so I'm using overlaid view, which is great view for this one. So I can see, do we have consensus here? What's going on? And then what I can say is, okay, let's talk about it. And so I could have my students talk it out. And while they're talking it out, what I can do on my end, as they're talking, I can be the one who's providing the visual cue for them. So I could say to them, okay, probably they're talking it out to me and they're saying, well, why don't you rewrite it first as cosine of x cubed and the whole thing squared. And you can see, because I have this overlaid view, as I'm writing, everybody in the class can see that. So a student could be explaining to me what I should do next. They could be telling me that information, and then I could be writing it over here. And so I can be writing as they're telling me what to do. And so in that way, even if I'm the only one in the classroom who has the Wacom tablet, I can be handwriting so that I can provide that visual that's so important so that students can follow along as we're going. So let's see who was correct here. This is the correct answer. So I have a negative 2 times 3 is 6, x squared. So whoever answered D, you were right on. All right, so that is a real example of how I might use this in the classroom. So you can see that even if I'm the only one who has the tablet and the handwriting ability, there's so much that I can do. And I think as a teacher, being able to write being able to draw, being able to mark things up, providing those visual cues is so important for students to be able to follow as I'm talking, what I'm saying. And so that to me has been very important and something I'm able to now do. So here are some, this was the same example from my class. And so you can see this is actually what we did. My students were right on the ball with this. They all got D, they all got it. But then I was able to talk it out. And so we dug into why is it correct? And we worked the full problem out. And again, students were able to see me write as I was writing. Another question was, this question really is more or less asking them to count up the area under the curve, and they're counting up boxes. So what I was able to do here is students were able to draw this even if they just had a mouse, and I could see the different ways they were approaching this problem, how they were splitting up the boxes in different ways. And it was really interesting, you know, to see the person who did it in blue was different than the person who split it up, who was writing in black. They had different numbers in the different cells. And it was interesting to be able to pull up the conversation and talk about the different approaches. There's not one right way to solve a math problem, which many students often get stuck in this thinking of like, there's a right way, there's a wrong way. And so I'm able to celebrate all the different ways to solve a problem. And so also there's these draggable slides, and some of these are pre-programmed into PearDeck, which I'm about to show. And that gives you an opportunity to just say, hey, how are you feeling? In a Zoom call, we've all been there where we're like, is anybody listening? Are people still there? Is everything going okay? Am I talking to myself? So I love doing these little checks with my students just to make sure, is everything good? I can get, again, that overlaid layout to make sure most people are doing okay. Should I keep going or should I stop right now? Maybe I need to explain that last problem again. You know what? I can do that. I can just go new prompt right here in PearDeck and say, you know what? I just need a little whiteboard. I just need that ability to go back and explain that concept again. And so my students would be telling me that information. I'm able to pull up a whiteboard, again, pretend that I'm a student in this moment, and I can just be drawing just like that. Okay, clearly a separate problem here, but I can draw, pull it up quickly and easily, all using one application. So I'm not fumbling on my computer to like pull up another application. Let me get a whiteboard. Let me get something else. No, I don't need to do that. I can do that all right here. I can show just my response. Hey, somebody else from class is helping me out with a smile face here. So that's how that works. So I said I would tell you how PearDeck has made me a better teacher in reminding me to ask better questions. So one of the things that PearDeck has available is all these template slides that are available right in the sidebar in your Google Slides. So if I go back here, you can see that there's this little template library in Google Slides. So you just click over there, you click on beginning of lesson. Hey, it reminds you, maybe you want to ask this question. What did you learn from the homework? You can just click it and it pulls it right in for you. So it's already a design slide. It already has interaction on it. Here it tells me that this is a text type slide right here. So that pulls that right in. And I can actually edit it. I have the ability to edit any of the text here. You could change the image, though why would you want to? They're so well illustrated. I love that part. And then the bottom bar is the thing that you don't touch. You leave that be, because that is what signals to PearDeck when you launch the session that, okay, this has interactivity. This one's going to be students are going to type their response, because that's the question type that it is. But there's a bunch of different questions, and something that I personally wasn't doing a great job with until I started using PearDeck was this end of lesson slides and reminding students to reflect before I closed the lesson. So giving students an opportunity to wrap things up. So for example, in 1 minute, what does it say? Write the most important thing from today's lesson. And so I use this slide type a lot, but I don't want to always be asking the same question. So I just edit this for whatever I need. And I usually ask something a little bit more targeted and specific to see what students are feeling. And I also love this one, pretend your friend was absent from class today. So again, there's a lot that you can pull in, get inspiration from, and it just helps you better design those lessons and ask those questions. Finally, If you are using Google Slides, as soon as you end the session, when I end it, something that I can do is I can publish the student takeaways. And publishing student takeaways means that it's going to generate a Google Doc for every student with their work and the question that was asked. So they're going to see all the slides that were asked, and then they're going to see their response. And this has been such a powerful way for my students to be able to reflect on prior work. They actually get all of this space to summarize their thoughts. Sometimes I require them to turn this in before a quiz or a test. It forces them to look back on prior work and to think about the answers that they had solved before, if they would solve anything any differently. And they look back over that work, reflect on their growth, and so forth. Also, as a teacher, like I was showing you, I mark it up as I'm going. And so I'm able to produce an answer key for my students. So this was actually one of them where this is an answer key that I then give all my students the link to my Google Doc takeaways. And so I can post that after class if a student was absent, if a student just needs to check their work against an answer key because they also have their own copy. That's wonderful. So students don't see each other's work when I publish these takeaways. They only get their own responses in this one. So I'm just going to leave you with a couple of ending reflection questions because I try and do that now. There's tremendous power in giving ourselves that chance to reflect and think before we move on. So if you are tuning in from home right now, you could pause or come back to this later and just think about how will you leverage PearDeck to engage all students in class? What are some ways that a Wacom tablet will allow you to provide more effective feedback and instruction for your learners? So these are just two questions that you might be thinking about right now. You might reflect on right now in the moment so that you're able to really take some of what you've learned today and put it into practice right away in your classroom. And finally, I will just leave you with this quote that I end my book with. If we empower students with the resources they need and coach them through the process of using these tools, then students can take ownership for their learning. And that's where the magic happens. And I really believe that these tools that I've shared with you today are part of that journey in giving students the tools that they need, the platform they need to be able to speak to you. For us as teachers, the tool that we need in order to write, to describe, to help us communicate to students how we're thinking through and working through problems in real time. And once you get those tools down and you're able to provide them to students, I think that's when we can really see all that students can do. And again, allow them to really take ownership for that learning. And so I just want to say thank you for tuning in today. If you are on Twitter, I'm very active on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @BuddyXO. You can also find my blog at techiemusings.com if you're interested in that. And my book is Tech with Heart if you're interested in checking that out. And you can feel free to reach out to me on any of these platforms. I have a contact info on my techiemusings.com blog. I also have a YouTube channel. I'm very active in interacting with any comments that you leave there. If you have questions, please ask them. And I'm so happy to be able to share any of the experiences I've learned over the years with you. So thank you so much for listening today. It was a pleasure to share.